Good morning, Mr. Tom McGee, and welcome to the Little Book of Proptech. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you, David. Are you?
I'm very well. If I might say, you've got a bit of a barnet there that equals Jerry Lyons.
I don't like to brag on certain other people, but I could give him a run for his money in their hair stakes at the moment.
He does like to make a lot of his hair, doesn't he?
He's always going on about it. I suppose, you know, if that's what he wants to bring to the table, then who are we to take it away from him? But no, this is booked in for next Thursday. It's getting trimmed and tidied up, and I can't wait, to be honest with you.
Well, good. I've been looking to get the number of a good gardener, so if you could send that through, that'd be great. Tom, thank you very much for joining me. You're a very regular voice and a very regular face on various different industry outlets, podcasts, and obviously you seem to be all over every Facebook post, everywhere.
I just don't have any life whatsoever, so that's how I get my thrills and giggles.
You know what? You have the fastest fingers in the Northwest. So you tend to be the one that responds first, and with also a very sort of witty response. So, where's Tom McGee come from? Where did the story all start?
The story is pretty boring. You know, born in Stockport, grew up in Stockport. I had no idea what I'd wanted to do for a living, so I went to university to study politics, which turns out isn't helpful if you want to do anything for a living. Came out of uni, still had no idea what I wanted to do for a living. Did a couple of public sector jobs and massively fell into a state agency, and actually really enjoyed it. And 20 years later, nearly, I'm still doing it. You know.
Do you think that, just going back to the beginning of that, you obviously set out with good intentions in life, as we all did. So your degree was, well, you studied politics. I did English literature, and we both ended up as estate agents. Do you think anybody actually plans to be an estate agent?
We've been interviewing for a vacancy this week, and a couple of people have said to me, "Oh, I've always wanted to be an estate agent," and I have to sort of stop the interview and say, "Really?" Because I don't know anyone who's always wanted to be an estate agent. But when you drill down to it, I think they think it's going to be something like selling Sunset. And you know, they're going to be sort of, oh yeah, look, I love estate agency. I just like the thought of going around £1 million houses, which, as you know, because you know where we operate, is not really the market that we're in, to be fair.
It's interesting because I did a valuation yesterday, and the vendor said, "Oh yeah, no, we watch all your videos. My daughter loves your videos, and it's inspired her to get into property. So if you ever have any jobs, let me know." And I thought, that's the first time anybody. Well, first of all, it's the first time I've inspired anybody to do anything. But you know, it's interesting. It's now, I think, becoming more of a choice, because I interviewed Murray Lee the other day, and I asked how he got into it. And back in the 70s, being an estate agent wasn't the dirty word that it was in the, say, 90s or the 2000s. It was extremely, it's desirable. It was seen to be a professional career.
And I think, you know, as an industry, we're guilty of the public's perception moving away from it being a professional career, and not just in the obvious ways, but it's things like we're constantly having a debate in the office, well, you know, with my business partners as well, about out of hours service, and you know, when we should be answering the phone and when we shouldn't be answering the phone. And you know, whilst it's really important to give good service to customers, obviously, you can't ring an accountant at 8 o'clock on a Thursday evening and expect anyone to answer. You can't ring your solicitor at 1 minute past 5 on any evening and expect anyone to answer.
That is very, very, very true. Just you were saying solicitors and accountants aren't sort of held to the same standard, because our industry is going out of its way in many ways to convince the public that we're providing a service that is world class. It's above and beyond anything they can expect from other professionals. Do you think in some ways we're trying to overdo it, or overcompensating?
Well, I think I think it's really interesting that you use the word world class, because that's a conversation again that we've been having a lot recently. And I think if most estate agents took a long, hard look at the service they're providing, there are very few obviously there are very few world-class estate agents by definition, but there are very few really great estate agents, I think. Yeah. I think even the estate agents that you and I might know from the sort of the social media circuit and from, you know, various different groups, I think if you really drill down into the service and the results they're getting, people aren't as good as we think we are. And, you know, that definitely contributes to the client's perception of us. And I think, you know, going back to the opening hours as just an example, I think we talk about providing exceptional service, but what we're really just doing is commoditizing. So we're leading people to expect that they can ring up at 8 o'clock at night and get the same response as they would do if they rang up at 10 o'clock in the morning. And in reality, they're not going to get that, are they? They're either going to get a very professional answer phone service, or they're going to get somebody who works in the agency who's at home, who's really annoyed that the phone has called, you know, and he's going to try and hide that as much as possible.
Yeah.
But you know, to a certain extent, what we've taken the decision to do, and it may be a bit counterintuitive, is we've stopped that, and we have an answer machine message that says the office is closed. Contact us during office hours. And if it's a rental emergency, leave a message. We'll listen to the message and, frankly, decide that it's not an emergency in 99% of the cases and deal with it the next day. But, you know,
I think to a certain extent that's really true. And you know, service levels in terms of how quickly you get back to somebody. So I find that the members of the public, if they call you at 10 o'clock, they've not had a call back by 10 past 10. They'll call again, and they'll call again, and they'll call again. By 11 o'clock, you may get a message saying, I've now left 4 messages. This is disgraceful. You've not got back to me. But in reality, you're quite right in what you say. I would never in a million years expect any service that I buy into to instantly sort of return to me, especially a professional service. Even if you were to call, I don't know, a call center for your bank or for your mobile phone provider, you'll be put in a queue until they're ready to answer your call, and that is perfectly acceptable these days. So I just wonder whether I feel like there's a conscious effort out there, and people like Peter Knight are responsible in part for this, because he set criteria for his EA Masters, didn't he, that are centered around service levels. So the sort of Rightmove mystery shopping results that back those awards that are given out based on how quickly you respond, how you responded, whether, you know, if somebody writes in by email, they want a response by email, whereas you and I might get an email and go, nah, mate, that's a phone call every day of the week. But that, you know, there are different standards, aren't there?
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the first of these Proptech interviews you did was with Mike Nettleton, and he was, you know, he used a phrase, the dogma about leads, and that really resonated with me, because, you know, we spend so much of our day chasing up leads that are never going to go anywhere, you know, because, you know, they've emailed in about a property that's come on the market. When you see their search criteria on whichever portal it is that they've emailed in from, it's you know, Manchester and 5 miles around. Yeah. So, you know, they've not got any particular great focus on the area that you're selling in. They've just seen something on Rightmove. It's so easy to click a button and say, give me some more details, or I'm interested in this property. What they therefore do is they send, you know, this email. And when you eventually get hold of them after chasing them 3-4 times, sending them an email, they can't even remember which house it is that they've inquired about. You know, whereas you've got people who are sat on the database who are probably genuine hot buyers for your area, who, if you're lucky, you'll speak to once a week as part of your applicant management process. And they're the people that we should be focusing our attention on. And it's trying to work out how to, that's our big challenge at the moment, is trying to work out how to do that in a way that doesn't alienate those people who are emailing in, and in a way that doesn't just ignore everybody who's contacting you via Rightmove. because there will be some genuinely good buyers in there, and and I think if we could nail that, then we'd be a long way to moving towards that great agency, that world-class agency that we were talking about before.
So not trying to sell you any Proptech this morning at all, I promise you, but there are products out there like Mike Nettleton's Agent Response, there's Leadpro, there's any number of them actually out there. Mike's a really good example of it, and if you look on the Kerfuffle site, there is some fantastic reviews. They speak for themselves. Other than the fact that Mike happens to be a very strong advocate for the industry and an agent on the coalface of it as well, but he's built a very simple but fantastic bit of kit. And the idea is that you are adding another layer of qualification to all of those inquiries that we're getting. It's interesting. We use a version of that at our place. We have an autoresponder that responds to all portal inquiries and attempts to qualify them as much as we possibly can. I wonder how much the public like doing that, or whether that actually frustrates them.
I think that's 22, isn't it? Because I think if you are sat on Rightmove and you say, "Oh, there's 9 properties in the area that I want to live. I'm quite interested in those 9 properties, which were on with 4 different estate agents. I'll send an email in asking for details or for a viewing." If you then automatically get 9 autoresponder emails back, or whatever it is, that you then got to go, well, how many of these do I have to fill in? What's the process? Does that frustrate them, and does that make them less likely to contact you about the next one in the future? Or once they've done that once, I think as long as you're doing the next step in the process, which is once they've filled in that response once, you've then got to properly manage your applicants. If you are going to filter people out using the auto-responding tools, you've then got to know that you have genuinely got guys in the office who are going to be speaking to people regularly. We all talk about this, but when you get a new instruction, if you're following a structured launch process, is it being matched to those players before it goes on Rightmove? Because if it's not, then there's no point in having autoresponders, because actually you need as many people to come from Rightmove to you, because that's how you're going to sell your house.
You mentioned earlier business partners, and I've asked you this question before, but I'm going to ask it again because it fascinates me, and it amuses me because I don't think I could do it. But yours is very much a family business, isn't it? So you work with principally your mother-in-law.
Mother-in-law and brother-in-law, yeah. So we've worked together. Well, she actually gave me my first job in a estate agency. So I, one Saturday, she was managing a branch of the Halifax estate agents in South Manchester, and she asked me to go to her office to take some stuff to the tip for them. And I turned up, and they'd had a cock-up in the viewing diary, and they had a family come up from London to view a property that they wanted to buy for their daughter, who was a student in Manchester, to live in for the next year, and they had no one to show them around. And they said, "Oh, you couldn't do us a massive favour, could you, and just go and show these people this house?" So I went to the property, I showed them round. I distinctly remember they weren't convinced a bed would fit in the single bedroom, so I lay on the floor and sort of did snow angels on the floor to show them it would definitely fit. And they bought it. And I thought, oh, this estate agency is quite easy, isn't it? And anyway, so we had a conversation. Myself and Lindsay, my partner, Mary's daughter, were saving up for a house at the time. And she said, "Well, we need somebody to do viewings on Saturday. Why don't you become our viewing assistant on a Saturday? It will be extra money that you can save up, and you never know, you might enjoy it and things like that." And 20 years later, nearly, certainly 19 years later, as I said before, I'm still in a estate agency. We haven't worked together exclusively for that period, but since late 2006, we worked together. In terms of running a family business, I think when it goes well, it's brilliant. In theory, everyone's united by a common goal, which is, creating a better life for the family. You've got people in the business as your business partners who you can rely on, and who value you and support you in different ways than just business connections. I think the difficulty with a family business is probably twofold. One is it's trying to keep family dynamics out of work, and it's trying to keep the work dynamics out of family time. And Easter Sunday this year, we because we're in a bubble with Mary, we're talking work stuff at the Easter Sunday dinner table, and that's not always a good thing to be doing. But equally as well, I think that when I say keeping the sort of family dynamics outside of work, we've had issues in the past where, because we're a family, sometimes you can treat the employees like family as well. And I think, I recognise not every family is like this, but in our family, there's sort of unconditional love, which means if you fuck up, you'll get forgiven for it, and repeatedly, and that's not necessarily the attitude that you want to have with your employees. So it's about trying to change that culture.
Do you know what it does? I work, when I'm estate agenting, I work together with a family team, so that my business partner there, David, his son Josh is our branch manager.
Yeah.
Lovely boy, and boy, he's a man almost. He's talking about getting married and buying houses. I've tried to convince him that that's not the way forward in life, but these suckers are born every minute. But it is interesting, because sometimes David's wife will work in the business as well, and to me that gave us a lovely sort of homely feel, and it's lovely, and they've treated me as one of the family. But it can, you're quite right, sometimes if you're not careful, you get a bit too carried away with it, and it's mostly a professional environment, but occasionally you're going to want to step up a gear with employees, and you seem mean-spirited when you have, when the gloves come off and you have to start, stop being somebody's friend, if you like, and start being a little bit more authoritative. So I can see where those challenges may arise, but hats off to you, my friend, because it's not easy. And I know a lot of families and partnerships can't hack having work and home so intertwined. What's your wife's view of it? She's chosen, obviously, not to necessarily.
Well, there was a period before lockdown that she was also working in the business,
Right.
And I think that's a whole different ballgame. The mother-in-law and the brother-in-law is one thing, but working day to day with your wife. You have
to draw the line somewhere, right?
So, but to be fair, she was very good. She's a teacher by training, but she was doing some business generation work for us, sort of coming in and hitting the phones and doing prospecting and doing very, very well. But I just think that's a relationship that you really got to think about how you're going to structure and manage this in a work context. And certainly you've got to be aware that I don't necessarily want to be telling my wife that she's doing it badly or wrongly. Not because she would react badly to it. I just think you've just got to be very, very conscious of how you're going to deal with that if that situation is going to take place. But yeah, we're a close family, so it works well for us. I think if I was advising anyone on it, I think in much the same way, if anyone asked me about just sort of business partners in general, I think the key, which we probably didn't do very well at the beginning, is just establish. Well, number one, is there a hierarchy? Are you all equal partners, or is somebody in charge?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with having somebody in charge. And in fact, actually, you probably do need to have somebody who's going to be the person who, if everyone disagrees, makes that ultimate decision. And number two, whose job is it to do certain things? And just be very, very clear about that. Not like, and I think the problem at the beginning is it's everyone's job to do everything, isn't it? When you're starting off, it's well, I'll do the valuations, but I'm also doing a bit of the necking, and I'll do some of the sales chasing, and I'll do this. And then as things grow, you sort of need to say who's in charge of this and who's in charge of that, and who, how are we going to report the progress of that back in a more formal way than just almost sat at the dinner table having a chat about it,
It's super interesting because I think that in some office, well, in any working environment, you can either appoint somebody to be the top dog or leaders emerge, if you like. So people that tend to take the lead. And there are those businesses as well that have too many chiefs and not enough people doing the legwork. So it's interesting how you divide that up. But I suppose, yes, as a business grows, one of the challenges that we all struggle with is compartmentalizing a little bit, because we don't like to let go. You'll want to know that your negging is being done the way that you want it. And sometimes you'll feel the only way to do that is to do it yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
So we've spoken about some of the things you don't like about a state agency. We've also spoken about your wife. But other than your wife, what about a state agency makes your dingle tingle?
I've never lost the buzz of setting up a listing. When I first started in a state agency, I was a lister, I was a valuer. That was that feeling of walking out of somebody's house with a signed contract, particularly if you know that they've cancelled the person who was coming yesterday, or they have to feel the valuation. So the person who's coming tomorrow, or they have to feel the valuations. That feeling of winning, I suppose, is brilliant. And I think that because of the way that the conveyancing process goes and the transaction process goes, I've never got that same feeling about getting an exchange of contracts, because it's more of a sort of drawn out experience where there's just a relief that it's finally ended. So I think that buzz of getting that listing, and I know Krista Watkins won't like this. I like to look at the pie chart and see that we're number one every now and again, and sort of compare how we're getting on to the competition, because I think that competition does drive you forward. And although, as I say, I've never got the buzz about exchange of contracts in the same way, it is nice when a first-time buyer comes into the office to collect the keys and they're mega excited that they're about to move into their first home, and you think, oh, well, that's nice. I've had a positive impact on someone's life there. For 5 minutes, you can get that warm, fuzzy feeling before you go back to being grumpy estate agents.
It is lovely. And one of Simon Wales' favourite catchphrases is straight out of The Usual Suspects, that the greatest trick the devil ever pulled off was convincing the world he didn't exist. But I think one of the greatest tricks that a lister can learn is not just to sort of celebrate the wins, but it's how to deal with those, how to deal with the ones that you lose, because we don't talk about that so much, but that can be, our egos are out there every single day, and you walk into a house and sometimes you think you've got it in the bag, and for whatever reason, you misread the situation and the vendor doesn't see the same way, and they will then, it's then a loser. How do you cope with that?
So I don't do that role as much as I used to, but when I did, I think for me, well, there was a couple of things I used to do to sort of cope with it. First of all, I'd obviously blame the vendor and Jeff about them in the office for 10 minutes and tell everyone what an idiot they were. And also make sure everyone in the office knew that it'd been overvalued and it was a really low fee quoted by the other estate agent, regardless of whether it had or it hadn't.
Oh, you lost it on fee. That's our catchphrase. If we lose one, we go, they probably gave them a silly fee.
Yeah, exactly. No idea if it's true or not, but I'm definitely going to make sure everyone in the office thinks that's the reason I've lost it. But actually, the ones that we have some competition here that vary dramatically in quality, and there's some that you lose to, and you think, well, they're not a bad agent. You're going to lose some to them every now and again, and perhaps you might think, well, that other agent sold one on the street actually, so I know, I can understand the thought process to a certain extent, and that's not to be defeatist, but it's just to think, well, there's a reason for that. Or perhaps, you've sort of gone and you've done your pitch and you said, well, this is our plan of action. And when you've spoken to the vendor afterwards, they want to go down a completely different route or a different approach. I think that's fine. What used to really frustrate me, and I never really understood how to deal with this, is when you knew they were making a bad decision. That they were going on with somebody who you knew was going to tie them into a 26-week contract. Yeah. That had overvalued it, or had or had history of telling vendors one thing and not delivering on it, and you could look at the marketing photos and know that they weren't going to be very good or what have you, and you just know that the problem that is twofold. One, it's bad for the vendor, but two, long term, it's bad for the industry that those people continue to get listings, and that used to really frustrate me. I don't mind losing to a good competitor, because if anything, if you keep losing to a good competitor, it makes you start thinking, well, what do I need to do to up my game to become better than that competitor? And it raises the standard of the office. It's when you lose to someone that you shouldn't lose to, and invariably, that is the fee or the valuation often, but that's the one I never worked out how to deal with.
It's it's really interesting. One of the things that I've done over the years, and I've now incorporated it as a permanent part of my pitch, is that when I leave them, I say to them, listen, I just want to let you know, look, these are my contact details. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't choose to instruct us on this occasion, please keep my details. If at any point you have a bad feeling about what's happening, you are confused, your agent hasn't explained it well enough, or you just want a different perspective, you can call me for my opinion anytime. And that leaves the door open, and they don't feel necessarily foolish when they then do call you, because you've kind of said, look, please do that, keep in touch. There's nothing you can do when somebody signed a silly, crazy contract forever. Talking about silly, crazy contracts, I spoke to Zoe from Belvoir the other day. Not that she's silly or crazy. Well, she's a bit crazy, but I love her in that way. But we talked about the perception of franchises or corporate estate agency. And what I said on that was that both you and her, to me, if I were just talking to you on any given day, I would not know that you were franchisees of a corporate entity at all. I would look at you as independent a local estate agent as it gets, because on face value, you're doing everything that we've always done. In the past, I think some of the corporates have had a bad rap, long contracts, terms that people are onerous in terms of forcing them to use certain conveyancing solutions or whatever it may have been. Stuff where, us independents, we always had. It's easy for us to say that shouldn't be the way, but we always had free reign to make it up as we went along. But really, you guys, to me, have shown me a different side to the industry in that respect. What's your view on it?
Well, I heard the interview with Zoe in it, and I think the thing with Zoe and ourselves is we've both been franchises for 15 plus years. So I think we're at maybe a different stage in that franchise journey than some of the other people who've been doing it for 2 or 3 years. And when we started, taking a franchise was a brilliant option for us, because we were estate agents who didn't have a clue how to run a business. And it was, in that sort of classic E-Myth language, we were the technicians who just sort of looked at it and said, you know what, we can do this and earn more of the fruits of our labour. And we went into an established structure and we continued to be estate agents, and the franchise basically run the business around us with a little input from ourselves. And gradually over time, we've moved away from that more into business owners, and we now have more of an idea of how we want things to go and what we want to do. And so, we work within the Your Move structure and we work within the Your Move brand, but I think if you were to sort of look at how things are done in our office versus a normal Your Move office, it's very, very different. And I think that's because we've just developed an idea of what we like to do, and we have a vision for how we want to service customers and the results we want to get for them, and we're implementing that vision, as I say, within the Your Move framework, because I've got to be careful to say we're doing it entirely our way, because we're not, and being part of a franchise has some massive advantages even now, 15 years down the line.
Yeah. Well, we have this discussion regularly, and we're not going to go too much into it because none of us are going to speak out of turn on air. But franchises are, when it comes to Proptech particularly, and decisions on which products to take, you haven't necessarily got complete free reign. Sometimes you're put into a queuing system where you'll get it when you get it. It's probably fair to say it's not for everybody, is it?
No, it's not. And I think that the environment we're in at the moment is very different to the environment that we were in 2006 when we were thinking about starting, or taking over a franchise. The sort of the self-employed options, the associate options that are around for people now didn't exist back then. So our options were literally go out and find an empty commercial premises and source the software ourselves, source the board guy ourselves, source the shop fitter ourselves, and literally dive in without knowing the first clue how to do things, or open a franchise, basically. I think now that there's a range of options outside of those two very sort of, or three, I suppose, stay employed, open a franchise, or do a cold start new business back in 2006. And now I think there are other options for the entrepreneurial staff members to do that maybe sit outside those areas. And I think that's the challenge for the corporates now, is to try and tap into that and see whether their networks can accommodate that,
Yeah, and to be as agile as they can for something that is a big beast, if you like, with many moving parts. So that's very interesting. Right, Tom, let's talk a little bit of Proptech. To what extent do you think? I mean, obviously, it's a buzzword for us. We're all about Proptech, and a lot of the solutions to our problems is there in Proptech. Do you think there's too much of it? I know this is a turkey, perhaps talking about Christmas here, but do you think that we have become over-reliant on it, or is in reality is there no such thing? Right, Mr. Tom McGee, time to play a game. So now I'm going to ask you some questions. Tom McGee, agree or disagree? Is Proptech overrated?
I think we've definitely become over-reliant on portals. I think there's a whole generation of estate agents who don't know how to put a deal together, who don't know who their buyers really are, and who don't know how to business generate, because it's all, in their eyes, wrongly, I believe, it's all done by the portals.
Yeah.
And I think that from that, you then, some of the basic skills of estate agency, we're constantly having a debate in the office. Again, it sounds like that's all we do, but we do some work occasionally. It's not even a debate. I'm just constantly trying to stop people registering customers directly onto the CRM, because I don't believe that's how you have a conversation, not even a qualification, but I just don't believe that you're having a proper conversation with somebody while you're typing onto a screen and, trying to move from one bit of the screen to the next screen, but they're trying to tell you about something that's on screen 3, and you're not listening because you can't put that information in on this section of the CRM, so they have to wait to tell you about it till later down the line.
And we end up becoming order takers, don't we, in sort of a very... Yeah.
Definitely, and I think when we say, are we over reliant on Proptech? That I think the issue is that when we take a new starter on, our focus is let's train them on how to use the CRM. Our focus should be let's train them on how to register an applicant, which you think is the same thing, but it's not. It's about, well, what questions are you asking to qualify? How are you building up the rapport? And they're the things that when you and I started, that's what we focused on. I think that we're losing that slightly. And then you get these situations where, from a Proptech point of view, everyone is looking for the silver bullet. We've done it in the past. We've gone, we need more valuation, so let's pay for Facebook advertising. We need more valuation, so let's pay for this. And actually we sell between 20 and 25 houses a month. So, and we've been in business for 15 years. Yep. So if we just focused, it's the Stephen Brown mantra, isn't it? But if we just focused on those past customers, we probably never need to do any sort of form of paid for business generation ever again.
Yeah.
And that's where I think that over-reliance on Proptech can come sometimes. Don't get me wrong, there's some absolutely fantastic pieces of kit. We've just re-signed up to Homesearch. We used it initially when it first came out as a free trial, and we liked it, but it wasn't a must-have for us. But with the changes that they've made and the sort of the prospecting tools that they brought in and things, we've signed up for that, and that's absolutely fantastic. We've looked at Sprift recently, which is really good. We've looked at Dataloft recently. Again, we've used that in the past, but it just didn't. It wasn't for us a killer reason to continue to pay for it, if we're being honest. But now we're looking at the whole sort of concept of content marketing and providing that data to people. And I'm definitely in the Proptech world, and for us, that's really good quality stuff. But I think we've really got to, as agents, say, well, what is it actually bringing to the table for us to improve the customer experience or to improve the customer journey? And if we're being told by the Proptech suppliers, well, it'll get you another listing. Well, will it? Because in my experience, they never do. And, I know it's a joke, and it's just, it only has to get you one listing to pay for itself.
Well, this show is going to be called Just One More Listing, just one more house sold, because that used to be the mantra. But the companies that you've just mentioned, so you mentioned Homesearch, you mentioned Dataloft, you mentioned Sprift. All of these are companies that if you visited their products a couple of years ago, they've evolved to an entirely more sophisticated animal entirely, but also as a tool, it's superb. But I think one of the things about all three of those products and the offering that those Proptech suppliers bring to the table is that they've listened to the feedback that agents have given them. And particularly at Sprift, I'm talking to Amy actually later this morning, but particularly with Sprift, Amy was on the tools estate agent for many, many years. And I feel that the ones that are run the best and the ones that take that estate agent feedback or incorporate that estate agent's knowledge into their product. And I think that's what you're now seeing in this, I suppose it's fair to say, second generation of those products.
Yeah, and I think go back to somebody that we've spoken about before. That's why Michael Nettleton's having success with his product. That's why Kristjan Byfield's having success with the Depositary. That's why Sam Hunter, he knows the estate agency world. He can talk our language. That's why these products are resonating with people, because they're solving a problem that we need to be solved, rather than a problem that somebody's perception is that it needs to be solved. I think.
No, I get that. Right. Tom McGee. Agree or disagree? It's grim up north.
Disagree. It's occasionally grim up north, but occasionally it's nice and summery, and it's not today. It's freezing and it's going to rain later, but we get a bad rep. And
I've worked in London. I'm sure you've been to London, or you may have even worked there yourself. It's fair to say that we're a little bit more cheerful up north, aren't we? Friendly?
Yeah, we're a nicer bunch of guys up north. I think definitely, and I know it sounds silly to say, because Manchester's a pretty big city, but I always describe it to people who are from sort of Greater Manchester or wherever it is. It's almost a very big village, because it's crazy how connected people can be. Yeah. Especially within sort of your niche areas or your communities or whatever, and it doesn't take long to work out who knows everybody and things like that. So yeah, I like it. I would, as I said at the very beginning of our chat, I currently live less than a mile away from my childhood home. Lindsay currently lives less than a mile away from her childhood home. My wife, we're sort of very much home birds. We live where we grew up. My daughter's going to the primary school that I went to. And it's nice to know your environment and to feel part of the community, I think.
Agree or disagree? Christopher Watkin is often annoyingly right.
he's almost always right. And I don't tell him this as often as I should, but his posts often make me really, really think about myself as a person. Because invariably, well, actually, he's not often always right. He's right most of the time. But invariably, even when he's wrong, he's trying to just make a point about who we are as people and why do we do certain things and what's our motivation for things. And, you know, he has definitely made me think about, well, why do I do certain things, and you know, what's my motivation for posting that or for saying that, or, you know, how's that vendor made me feel, and is that actually about my feelings, or is it about you know, getting the best result for the vendor and things like that. And I think Chris has you know, I know everyone likes to pull his leg about the clickbait, but Chris has really helped more people in this business than I think he is given credit for. Not just in terms of inspiring people, and he was very much the sort of leader for content marketing and a lone voice for a long time. But not just inspiring people from that side of things, but also as well, just you know, I know a lot of people who've had difficult times, and Chris Watkin is often one of the first people on the phone to them to have a chat, to put his arm, a metaphorical arm around them and have a chat with them and you know, make sure they're okay, you know.
I agree. He's tremendous like that. There's a reason he's one of those mentors for that charity. It's just absolutely superb. He's been doing that for years, and I think that what's interesting is it's easy for us as agents to read Chris out of context, because really some of his posts are aimed at poking our egos a little bit and saying, hey, take a look at yourself in the mirror. This is how the outside world sometimes see you. Are you doing the best for you, and are you doing the best for your clients? And not everybody wants to hear it. So the tendency is, and I've said this to Chris a million times, and I have to almost apologize for it, but I went through a period of my career not liking Chris at all, because I read those posts and I thought, oh, what the hell does he know about this? But the truth is, it all comes from a place of love, and the reason it hurt is because it's overwhelmingly true 99.9% of the time. So that is a very interesting answer to that. Agree or disagree, anyone can be an estate agent.
Agree. Yeah, 100% agree, actually. I think that at its most basic level, the skills that are needed to be an estate agent it's not rocket science. You know, what we're doing is pretty simple. It's very hard to do well, but I think that anyone can do it. Now, whether anyone can do it to a really good standard on a consistent basis is probably a different conversation. But I think that is often to do with people's mindsets rather than their abilities. You know, we've had, like everyone, we've had tons of staff through the door of this office, and very, very rarely have we ever said somebody's not technically good enough to do the job. If they're leaving, it's usually to do with their attitude about doing the job correctly rather than their technical ability to do it. So, yeah, I would say, you know, to a certain extent, anyone can do it.
Agree or disagree, training is something that is probably very important, but we all tend to overlook from time to time.
100% agree. 100% agree. We constantly want to do more training than we're doing, and it's trying to get off that rat run of, we can't take the staff away from the front desks and the offices, you know, and the phones for an hour to train them because we're too busy, right? And you know, and therefore we just keep letting the same issues develop because we never have time to resolve it. But actually, if we train them, then we have more time because we wouldn't be constantly dealing with those same issues that are developing. It's just, you know, it's a vicious cycle, isn't it?
I'm going to change your life. If you haven't already had one, I'm going to make sure that you do get one. But Kerfuffle's agency subscription comes with the most fantastic online learning platform where you've got hours and hours of training. We've got a new starter next week, and we were wondering, well, where are we going to start? We always, you know, if you want to nurture somebody through the business, you need to make sure that their introduction to the business, it can be very daunting. So to sit them down and go, look, this is everything that you've got to learn and you must learn it now. But I think there can be a sort of a gradual tapered process, and hopefully we've got them starting learning with Julian O'Dell online, basically. You can do that from the comfort of your home or your office whenever you want. It's on tap. I'm going to make sure that you get one of those, Tom, and you can implement it. But I'd be glad to hear your feedback on it as well, actually.
Okay,
it's proving immensely popular with a lot of agents, but I think that training is something we often do overlook, and we're so focused, and let's face it, so busy on just getting the job done.
I think one of the positives to take from the last sort of 12, 13 months is going to be that in the past, and again, we've spoken during this conversation about being from Manchester, but in the past, if I wanted to send somebody on a training course, I would be asking them to get a train at 6 a.m. to go down to London for the day, and then it's the cost of the training course plus the cost of the travel plus the full day out of the office, I might send them down to Birmingham to do a half day with Stephen Brown, or if we're really lucky, Julian O'Dell would doing a road show and we could get them on something. But it would be a full day out of the office, and it would be, well, we've got a training need now, but the training course isn't available for 3 months.
Sure.
So. Whereas I think the coronavirus stuff, and you mentioned the thing that you do with Julian, we've looked at the able agent stuff as well, and in fairness, you all do quite a lot of stuff for us as a franchise. That at least we can do video training at a time that suits us, and I think that's something positive moving forward, hopefully.
Okay, we're going to change games a little bit now. This is a mixture of Jeopardy and Mastermind all together, okay? So Tom McGee, your chosen subject is a state agency and the property industry. And I'm going to make up the questions as we go along. So you're going to have to allow me to have a little bit of brain lag here and there, okay?
Don't test me on any compliance stuff. I don't want it to be exposed. I don't know what I'm doing.
It won't be anywhere as serious as that, I promise you. Here's a taster question. I am quite posh. I'm likely to have a collection of tweed jackets with leather patches on the elbow. In my Jaguar glove compartment, you're going to find a pair of riding gloves. Who am I?
Tweed jackets, leather patches, Jaguar glove compartment.
I'll give you another clue.
Quite posh. You're talking about...
I'll give you another clue. Yeah. If you're very, very nice to me, you may get an award.
The one and only Peter Knight.
There we go. 10 out of 10. That wasn't so difficult, was it?
No.
Okay. We're a controversial family. We've come up with the solution to what the property industry portal world is looking for. Who am I?
Well, I would like to put on record for their lawyers that I have nothing but respect and admiration for the Bruce brothers, and the cease and desist letters could go somewhere else.
Okay, all right. I have bushy hair and a propensity to write very nice articles, but I tend to go on about my hair a little bit too much. Who am I?
Jerry Lyons.
Perfect. I've got little arms and a beard like Jeremy Beadle. You may have sat on my couch. Who am I?
Christopher Watkins.
He has little arms, like honestly, like a T-Rex. It's terrible. I don't know how that guy wipes his bum. I really don't. He must have somebody to do it for him.
With the money that Watkins must be earning, I'm sure he could pay for somebody to do that.
That's what we talk about. I asked Simon, what's the goal with Kerfuffle? And his simple answer was, we want Watkins dollars. So,
yeah, well, that's what everyone's aspiring to, isn't it? To earn that sort of money. And especially if you live in Grantham, it goes a little bit further, doesn't it?
I think it does. Only 2 hours from Manchester, Tom.
It's commutable for us then.
Well, if he's ever looking, I've offered him, if he's ever looking for a fluffer, I'm available every day of the week. Tom McGee, thank you very, very much for being with us today. I'm going to let you go. I'm sure you've got better things to do than play games with me. But I am going to have you back for another session of Mastermind in the future, because I think there's more we can do with this format. So what have you got planned for this morning, Tom?
I suppose I should do some work at some point, but we just day of prospecting and got some job interviews this afternoon. We've got a property manager vacancy at the moment, which is a little bit of a thorn in our side. So at the moment, me and my business partner are the property managers for our office, which is definitely not the estate agency I enjoy. I think it's probably fair to say.
Okay, well, I'm going to let you get on with that. But before I do, you've very kindly given me an hour of your time. If you could have an hour of anybody's time, alive or dead, from the industry or not, who would it be?
So I think there are probably two answers to this. Like everyone, I feel obliged to mention a dead relative because, once one person has done that on these interviews, then everybody has to do it, otherwise they look heartless. So for me, it's my two grandfathers, one of which passed away 14 months ago. Very, very lucky, lived around the corner from us. We used to spend lots of time together. And then my maternal grandfather died when I was 9. So I'd just like to have a chat with him as an adult and find out a little bit more about his life and things like that. But moving away from the sort of emotional schmaltzy answer.
Don't bring us down, Tom. It's a Friday, man.
Yeah.
We've got the weekend
honestly,
to look forward to.
I didn't really want to say it, but but then I think this is probably a boring answer, but it's probably true. When people ask me about dinner party guests or whatever, the 3 people I would really like to be able to sit down and talk to are Tony Blair, Dave Brailsford, the Sky cycling guy, and Clive Woodward. I think they would be interesting to speak to. They've done some things in life which are pretty impressive achievements, and I would like to have a good chat with them.
I'd like you to ask Clive Woodward about the time that he chose to invade Iraq. Oh no, hang on, that's the other guy, isn't it?
I want to ask Clive Woodward if he remembers John Paul making a fool of himself with him at an industry dinner.
Okay, who would win in a fight between John Paul and who's big enough to take on John Paul in your right? Okay, here's a good one: Ryan Woolfenden versus John Paul. Who's coming out of that fight?
I think John Paul wipes the floor with pretty much anyone in our industry.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, I think so. I suspect he's a little bit handier than you think. Anyone who's been at sort of professional level mixed martial artist probably knows a little bit about how to handle himself. That being said, I'm sure he's a big pussycat.
I am the industry's biggest legend. Who am I?
The one and only Murray, surely. He's a legend in his own lunchtime.
I'm sorry, the right answer was Simon Whale. I've been paid to say that.
I'm not sure legend means what you think it means.
Oh, I know what it means in Simon Whale's context, and that's fine with me. He's keeping the lights on here at Kerfuffle Towers, and that's good with me.
In the bills.
Tom, thank you very much. Go sell some houses, go manage the hell out of that company, and go and find yourself a good lettings manager today. I think you're going to crack it. Yeah, it is hard to find the right staff, isn't it?
I think that's a big challenge at the moment. Because let's be honest with you, who's good at leaving our industry at the moment with it being so busy and the pipelines being built up and things like that? For the property manager position, we're not looking for somebody with industry experience, which is an advantage, I think. But honestly, I also think, I probably shouldn't be saying this on something that may be broadcast, but I'm rubbish at interviewing people. Because I either decide within 30 seconds I just don't like them, and then I have to drag the interview out for another 20 minutes just to look polite, or maybe it's naive, but I don't think you can really tell that much about somebody on an interview. You know, nobody is going to come in and say, actually, I'm looking to do the bare minimum that I can get away with, and it's very much just a place to come and earn a salary and use the internet for free.
Let's face it, the first job interview is like everybody's Tinder profile. It's an absolute fantasy, and it's an exercise in convincing the other person that you are somebody that you're not. And I would say that works both ways, because the employers as well don't represent a true image of themselves. Because you'll describe your company as being the best place in the world to work, and it's extremely efficient and corporate, and it's the best career progression they can ever have. If we're both honest with each other, there are times where that isn't exactly true, is it?
Yeah, 100%. And I think often the difficulty is that when you're recruiting, it's almost always going to be one of those times when that's not true, because by definition, especially you and I run similar-ish size businesses.
We do.
When somebody is missing from the team, it is noticeable, and it puts stresses on everyone else who is in the office, answering more than their fair share of phone calls, dealing with stuff that from their perception isn't what they're supposed to be dealing with, and things like that. So, when you're then sat in the interview room or on Zoom with a potential new starter, and you're telling everyone about how great the culture is and how organised it is and everything like that. And meanwhile, out the corner of your eye, you can see two staff members having a party because the stress levels are just higher than they would be normally. It's definitely one of those situations where you're trying to impress them and they're trying to impress you. And I think, I know you can ask people about values, and you can get to find out what motivates people, and you can ask questions in a certain way to find out if they are telling you the truth about something that they have done. But I also think that realistically, you just got to employ somebody and then see what they're like after 2 months, haven't you?
Yeah, I know, absolutely. Well, look, if you need any references, you tell them to come see me. I'll give you a glowing report.
Perfect.
Tom, thank you very much. Have a great day, yeah?
Speak soon.